Acquiring morphs is interesting. There are very few instances of actually approaching an animal and acquiring its DNA. The majority of morphs are gained from these floating test tubes that are just lying around for no apparent reason. They're unmarked, so you have no idea what you're going to get until you've acquired it. Oh, a llama! Huzzah! Only one Animorph can acquire a test tube. After that, it vanishes. With the ability to rotate the four main Animorphs at will, since they fuse into one body to get around, it becomes a game of, who would look goofier turning into a kangaroo? The graphics are functional, I guess? Even 13 years ago, this was clearly on the cheap end of the graphic stick, with really flat, fuzzy textures, lots of flat polygon shapes, all in these matte-painted boxes. More effort was put into character models, which is appreciated. They're only a step above the character models from the original Alone in the Dark game, but they have decently fluid movements and ultimately serve the game. There's even some nice little touches, like how each Animorph takes a different pose when standing still. I really like little details like that. If I have one objection to the character design, they decided to put a giant Animorphs logo on Rachel and Cassie's outfits, because it's not like we're trying to keep our identity secret or anything. The game opens with a couple of tutorials, including a running minigame through the forest. This is the most reoccurring minigame. You race around obstacles trying to beat the clock, and if you fail, well, you just do it again until you don't. What's funny is that there's only one point in the game where the characters are at risk of not making it to the finish line in time. Otherwise, the time limit is just there as a game mechanic without context. Controlling the running animal is clumsy. It feels like it was originally designed for an analog stick, and it makes dodging obstacles a bitch. Obstacles like pit traps, snares, swinging logs. Wow, Cassie, you really have some major poaching problems. Also, you can practice combat in Cassie's barn because for some reason her parents decided to install a hologram projector in a wildlife clinic. Yeah, I don't know, just roll with it. The story starts proper with the Animorphs heading to the school to sneak into Chapman's office for intel, a very stock Animorph setup. Oh look, it's Apple High. So much for we can't tell you where we live. The way the game opens suggests that this takes place right after the first book or two. Tobias is already stuck as a hawk, and Axe is nowhere to be seen. The characters only really have battle morphs, and everyone is still learning things about the Yeerks.
This door is locked. They're obviously expecting us.
Or it's after hours and large parts of the school are shut down. Well, that's one bit that's accurate to the book. Cassie is still a moron. You do eventually find an oversized key that lets you into a maintenance room that's crawling with cockroaches and not much else. I guess the puzzle here is to find a way to trap a cockroach in a morph. Maybe we'll find something later for this. So the first challenge is to break into Chapman's office. So, what would be the most practical way of going about this? Maybe we morph a bird and fly up to the window. No. Maybe we pose as the students we are and sneak in that way. No. Maybe we morph cockroach and go through the ventilation. No. Oh, I know! What if Rachel morphs gorilla and jumps from building to building while robots try to attack her? There, that's the ticket! Yes, I said Rachel. She gets both her grizzly bear morph and a gorilla morph in the game, while Marco is stuck with a polar bear. These games have a serious issue with letting Marco morph his trademark gorilla. This triggers a platforming minigame because gorillas are known for their huge vertical leaps. There's something off about all of this. The camera angle makes it really difficult to judge jumps. You have to start over if you fall off a building, even if logically you could jump back on with the ridiculous height of your leaps. On the other hand, the hunter robot enemies are just decorative. They rarely touch you and never really interfere with your jumps. What's really funny is that there are clearly kids walking around the school grounds, and somehow they don't notice a fucking gorilla bouncing around the school buildings, destroying random barrels and avoiding flying robots. After a dozen tries minimum, you eventually get to Chapman's office and find the security code for his computer.
That's amazing! I've got the same combination on my luggage!
Why does the Yeerk number pad have the Animorphs logo on the top there? Anywho, Rachel finds a map for the nearby mines and makes her way back to the group, which means doing the whole gorilla minigame again, this time in reverse. They see Chapman drop something on the way out of the school, and it looks high-tech. What could it possibly be? A Yerk weapon? A communication device? Ignoring how he couldn't possibly have noticed something this big falling out of his pocket onto the concrete, Chapman's a fairly high-ranking Yerk. If he has it, it must be something important.
What is it? I don't know. Let's find out.
Whoa! It's a bug magnet.
A device that attracts insects. Why the fuck do the Yerks have a device that attracts insects? Why the fuck is Chapman, of all people, carrying around a device that attracts insects? There's simply no story reason for this to exist. It's only here because the designers couldn't come up with a non-stupid way to capture a cockroach. This is frankly insulting. You might as well have Chapman drop a press to go to the next part of the game button. Are we suggesting that cockroaches are such crafty motherfuckers that you can't catch one without alien technology? You couldn't just do something simple like get a non-lethal mousetrap from one part of the school, get some edible trash from another part, put them together and leave it out for a little bit until you catch a cockroach? That's pretty simple and as linear as anything else in the game, but it A, doesn't insult the player's intelligence, and B, gives the player a stronger sense of participation in the story. You don't even use this thing later. Once you get the cockroach morph, you just casually throw away this alien technology. You end up following Chapman through the forest and find a ventilation shaft which, in a rare moment of giving you options, you can either go through as a squirrel or a cockroach. Pro tip, always go with a cockroach. The vents are full of loose electrical current and gas flames, which is just a hassle in squirrel morph, but the cockroach morph can walk on walls in the ceiling, allowing you to circumvent most of the obstacles. The camera angle is pretty bad in these segments. You can't see down a passage until you're like almost halfway through it, and it's really hard to walk in a straight line for some reason. But like everything else in the game, there's no real lethality here. If you keep slow and careful, you should get past these parts without much problem. You end up in the Yerk pool, which naturally is pretty tame compared to its book counterpart, but at least it's got a little bit of size. It's mostly empty, save for a few Hork-Bajirs and Taxons bouncing around like bumper cars. You really don't have much sense of direction. You're just going around collecting random crap without much objective, finding areas the programmers didn't bother filling in with a texture, and when you try to leave...
I don't think we found everything yet.
God damn it. Well, eventually you do get out without really accomplishing anything. Now, doing a play-by-play of the plot would be tedious, as the game just keeps bouncing you around between half a dozen or so locations, gathering the tiniest bits of information, fighting a few aliens, maybe solving a puzzle, and collecting a random item or two. You go to places like a mansion run by the Sharing, a mining company, an archaeological dig that Cassie's parents are involved in because they're veterinarians and therefore know a lot about dinosaur fossils. To the game's credit, it really does feel like you're uncovering a mystery. You discover a pattern of Yerks taking over various digging operations, and you go through a series of micro-investigations to discover why. I would say it's rather blandly paced, but there's still a forward progression in its narrative. And while having them involved in an archaeological dig makes little sense, including Cassie's parents in the story was probably the smartest move this game makes. Them possibly being in danger adds real stakes and motivates much of what the characters do, including party splits and parallel investigations. This would have been even better if we actually saw Cassie's parents, but it's more in line with the books than anything the other two Animorph games ever did. The game has a rather large cast of experienced voice actors, and while the script doesn't really demand that much from them, they do a pretty good job overall.
Cages everywhere. Some filled with humans. There's so many. The Sharing is really getting big. And the sounds. I don't know if I can listen to this noise much longer.
You do realize I'm a boy dog, right? I'm just asking.
So change to solar and change their future. A better tomorrow starts today. For information on solar water heater rebates, visit aps.com.
Wow, this is amazing.
What did you find, Rach?
The device we found is called the Interlock Transformer. It looks like it's used to unlock force fields.
Excuse me? Since we're all speaking our minds, I'd like to follow a piece of advice that a very smart little girl once gave me. She said, when you feel strongly about something, you're supposed to let it out.
Look, I know you can kill me, but hear me out first. I can help you. You're not like the other Evolve, right? We can agree on that? Well, neither am I.
Good. You can use the tab key to select a different player. Choose the member that you would like and walk over to the key near the back corner of the barn and click the action key.
Serviceman Nirali Bhatia died on Eden Prime, as Mr. Bhatia no doubt told you. Her wounds are inconsistent with any type of weapon damage we've seen before. That is why her body is being held.
Get out the butter and jam, Sammy, because this dude is toast.
A shovel. I'll hold on to this. Whoa! Was that a person or an animal?
I got him, Carson. He's heading for the Louvre. Your plans are over.
What? I never said you were... Ugh,
Never mind. Okay, here's hoping Green Beetle knows his stuff.
I think there's a fine line between fishing and sitting by the side of a pond with the stick in your hand looking like an idiot.
And you're doing a good job at it.
Gee, thanks.
I am going to live off my good looks and seductive charm.
Me llamo Ramon Salazar, the 8th Castellan of this magnificent architecture. I have been honored with the prodigious power from the great Lord Sadler. I've been expecting you, my brethren.
In fact, there's a decent amount of talent behind the scenes. The soundtrack is composed by Jack Wall, who also did music for the first 2 Mass Effect games, a couple of the best sequels, and most recently Call of Duty Black Ops 2. In the art department, we have Robert Rossoff, who didn't do any other video games, but did go on to do visual effects for the Shrek films, J.J. Abrams' Star Trek, and Tim Burton's Alice in Wonderland. And character animator David Bondi became an animator for South Park. It's not exactly a who's who's list, but it's still neat to see how people expand beyond just this one little licensed game.